In the early 1860s, there was a move to try to get money together to build a town hall, and a subscription list was opened in 1862 by one of the clerks, James Clark II. But what then happened was that one of James's relations, George A. Clark, who had spent most of his career in America developing the thread business there under the Clark name, he died, and he left a legacy.
So this is it. Oh, yes. These are all the different cylinders that operate the mechanism. Oh, it looks as if you can even play one. Amazing. I've never seen this before. When the town hall opened in the early 1880s, one of its features was the carillon, which is a system which could operate the bells in the clock tower. I'm assuming they hit some sort of a little hammer mechanism somewhere, and that will strike each of the bells in turn. And it played a range of something like 30 different popular tunes, and in December they would change it to Christmas carols. It's suffered over the years. It's been in and out of operation. I think it was last renovated about 20 years ago, something like that. And they used to put the carillon on at midday, and it would play one tune one day and then something else the next day. So it was a much loved feature in the town. It's an important part of Paisley's history. I certainly hope it's back in operation when the town hall reopens.
The upper floor is a smooth stones, and it is all held together by the entablature. The entablature is made up of the architrave, then the frieze, the smooth bit, and then the cornice.
The Paisley people were very sociable, and there was a history of concerts on the Glenifer Braes every summer. The other intention of George A. in leaving the money was that there should be accommodation for working men to get together, and their part of the building was to be open from 8 in the morning until midnight, so that they could get together and enjoy a smoke.
But completely separate, with no interconnecting doors, public doors, was the reading and smoking room for the lower classes. You're in the upper half of the reading and smoking room, double height, and the windows right up there.
George A. Clark went to America to operate their business over there because at the time of the American Civil War, the Americans banned the export of raw cotton, which meant that in order to keep their business running, they needed to operate a mill out in America. So they set up a huge mill, and George was the designated Clark family member who managed the mills over there.
When George A. Clark died and left his money, he specified that the town hall was to be built in the new town of Paisley, in other words, on this side of the river. You can see what the buildings on the actual town hall site were used for before they were demolished. There were two separate dye works, one of which had a set of stepping stones into the river, and on the south side you can see the turner's workshop, and that workshop was the workshop where the first bobbins were made for selling thread for James Clark back in the early 1800s. And everybody in Paisley would know that the secret of the Clark's initial success were twofold. First of all, making better thread, but secondly, bobbins. And bobbins became a hallmark of the industry as a whole. The idea of selling hanks just disappeared.
Cotton was the thread that bound Paisley together. Now, having it on a bobbin and just pulling off as much as you needed at a time was a great innovation. Made life easier for the sewer.
There had been an architectural competition to design a town hall. The one that had won was by a local firm called Renison and Scott, and they had designed a town hall in the French Renaissance fashion.
Already Renfrew, which was Paisley's rival, had a French Gothic town hall when Paisley had none. So anyway, the four surviving brothers didn't like that design, and they went and looked at the other designs, and they rather liked the design put in by W.H. Lynn of Belfast.
They thought a classical model would be much better, and so they got W.H. Lynn to design something which was much more fitting for the centre of Paisley, both I think in terms of the overtones of classicism and rationality and the Enlightenment and so on, but also they felt they had more dignity and presence than a French model would have. The idea was not just to build a town hall, but to give it a setting that was worthy of it and of the town.
They had realised that this town, this enormous industrial town, didn't have what every other industrial town in Britain seemed to have by that time, a big town hall to show civic pride.
And this started a process which continued until after the First World War of clearing away buildings that obstructed the openness of the town centre. It's all part of a wonderful concept of what a town centre should be.
The Paisley Town Hall is one of the premier venues. It's a very large floor, it's a good dance floor, there's plenty of seating all around it and plenty of room for dancing. The facilities here are probably the best in the patch. The ladies and gents like to turn it on. It may be an afternoon, it's not an evening out, but most of the ladies will have on a nice frock and the gentlemen will wear shirts and ties. They might take their jackets off if it gets a wee bit warm, that's permissible.
There's all kinds of jobs that we've got involved in here over the years, and one of the unpleasant jobs that we had to do was run cabling for a new front of house PA system, which involved crawling along the void under the seat. As you make your way along, your hands sink through dust, and there's things in the dust. That's where the box comes in. Now, while we were crawling about inside there, it's very dark. All you had was the light of a head torch, so I was finding things like this, not knowing what it was, and just sticking it inside the various pockets of my boiler suit, thinking I'll have a look at that when we come back out. Then we have 90 shilling ale. The most important thing that we found was a programme for a series of Saturday concerts. The original was given over to the care of the museum. It didn't take a lot of investigating to find out that all of these dates fell on a Saturday in 1915. Entire profits of this season's concerts will go to the local war relief fund.
To me, the town hall is a marvellous expression of the social class system of the 19th century when this building was built. So you have these beautiful rooms in which we're standing were for the elite of the town. They were millionaires by modern standards. This was originally designated as the chamber music room and exhibition room. This was a nice breakout space for the middling sort. The town hall caters for all the classes of the town. So you have two separate entrances and separate staircases for those who wouldn't be able to afford the more pricier tickets, and they would have a long climb up to the gallery.
23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 59, 60, 64, 65, 71. Oh! Take a very good actor to make his voice project this far.
And so a lot of money came into Paisley. Now this money could quite easily have been squirreled away and used to do things in other places, but the Paisley men and women, I think, they wanted to do something for the place. Georgie had his ups and his downs, but he had a very good set of moral principles. The other interesting thing about him was he hated the Coateses, who we saw as rivals. I think he saw them as rather upstart rivals because they were doing what his family had invented, making fine thread and selling it in bobbins.
It's a beautiful old building. When buildings were put up in those days, a lot of considerations weren't given to things that we do give considerations to these days. The accessibility problems are widespread. When we reopen, the whole building will be accessible to anyone who cares to access any part of it.
I've become a very great admirer of the centre of Paisley as a model of how a town should develop.